9/11. These numbers tell a story. 2,996 deaths and 6,000 injuries. 9/11 changed America forever. But you've heard this before, numerous times in the last 48 hours. So why not tell you something that you haven't heard? Like how America used 9/11 as a smokescreen. How Washington assaulted human rights in the name of its war on terror. How America expanded its military presence in the name of peace. Why not tell you about the real legacy of 9/11? This story too can be told in just numbers. Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I'm Palki Sharma. And these are the countries in which America conducted counter-terrorism operations in just the last 2 years. The US struck Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Pakistan, Somalia, Syria and Yemen with drones. The US engaged in combat in Kenya, Mali, Nigeria and a total of 12 countries. The US conducted military exercises in 41 countries and counter-terrorism training in 79 countries. All of this between 2018 and 2020, and all of this on the pretext of the global war on terror. It's a war that US President George W. Bush began in the days following 9/11. The attacks killed 2,996 people. The war killed around 929,000 people. 929,000. 100 times the casualty of 9/11? Try 300. 300 times. Civilians were killed by America's post-9/11 wars. Among them were journalists, humanitarian aid workers, contractors, at least 8,000 of them. And of course, troops. 7,000 American troops died in the post-9/11 wars. 73,000 Allied troops died in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and more than 100,000 in Iraq and Syria. So what exactly happened in the last 20 years? The US invaded two countries, Afghanistan and Iraq. America ransacked the lives of 40 million Iraqis in its futile hunt for weapons of mass destruction. They were never found. In Afghanistan, after 20 years of assault, the US left 39 million Afghans at the mercy of the Taliban. The same Taliban that the US had set out to fight. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda, aka the group behind the 9/11 attacks, remains more resilient than ever. Its affiliates have stationed themselves in 17 countries across Africa, Asia and West Asia. So what exactly was America doing in the last 20 years? Killing civilians, displacing them. American presidents waged wars on constitutional checks and balances, fighting human rights at home, and of course furthering their agenda in the name of the war on terror. Let's look at the collateral damage. America's post-9/11 wars killed 335,000 civilians in 5 countries: Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan and Yemen. In Afghanistan, the US was as deadly as the terror groups it was fighting. And I'll give you an example. Between 2017 and 2019, the Taliban and the ISI killed an average of 2,071 Afghans every year. America and its allies killed 1,134 civilians every year by airstrikes alone. American tanks and troops not only killed people but also displaced them. In the last 20 years, American troops entered countries, uprooted people, forced families to leave their homes and migrate to alien lands. 38 million people were displaced, 38 million, as a result of America's post-9/11 wars. 5.9 million people were displaced in Afghanistan, 3.7 million in Pakistan, 4.6 million in Yemen, 4.3 million in Somalia, 1.8 million people in the Philippines, 9.2 million in Iraq, 1.2 in Libya, and 7.1 million people in Syria. The total exceeds the number of people displaced by every war since 1900 except the Second World War. Some people died, some were displaced. Those who chose to stay behind were pushed into poverty. Again, let's consider the case of Afghanistan. 6 out of 10 Afghans live in poverty. The GDP per capita is some $500 per year. The US spent 20 years and claims to have spent upwards of $3 trillion in Afghanistan. What it really did was destroy property, economy and hopes in Afghanistan, all in the name of the war on terror. These wars did not even benefit Americans. Many were illegally kidnapped, detained and tortured. Many were termed enemy combatants. Let me give you a figure. At least 720,000 people were put on a no-fly list. What for? Random reasons. Senator Ted Kennedy once found himself featured on the list. while the real perpetrators of 9/11 found themselves without any sentence. Did you know that the mastermind of the attacks, Khalil Sheikh Mohammed and 4 others, are still undergoing trial in the US? It's been 20 years, 15 since the 5 of them arrived at America's Guantanamo prison. Tell me one thing, how does the state respond to a crime? By bringing the perpetrators to justice, right? America did wage a war, but forgot to try the perpetrators. George Bush knew where Osama bin Laden was. He chose to invade Iraq instead, not Pakistan. Barack Obama then had Osama bin Laden killed just in time for re-election. Donald Trump promised to get troops back home and won an election. The 3 presidents, they are the real winners of this war. Bush ensured that starting with him, all American presidents had the right to wage a war without bothering with the consent of the Congress. Only 56 current members of the House and 16 senators were present during the 2001 vote. The bill they passed was used by Bush and his successors to join wars in at least 14 countries in the name of fighting jihad. In the last 20 years, the Pentagon spending has gone up at least 50%. Reports say every hour American taxpayers are paying $32 million towards the cost of post-9/11 wars. What has the world achieved? With all the funds and fighting, there is no peace in America, none in Afghanistan, neither in West Asia. Jihad has found a new home ground in Africa. Terrorists have found themselves in cabinet berths. And the United States found itself with more enemies than before. 4 presidents, 20 years, immeasurable damage, and nothing to show for it. What happened, America? You know, we chose not to raise this question yesterday out of respect for the victims of 9/11 and the loved ones they left behind. 9/11 was life-changing. There is no denying it. America has the right to avenge 9/11. There is no denying that either. But could they have done things differently? Perhaps. The victims of 9/11 deserve justice, as do the innocents who have been killed and scarred by America's 9/11 wars. 20 years ago, America tweaked the Holocaust mantra and said, never forget. The world has not forgotten 9/11. Washington, too, should not forget that it had set out to fight terror, not add to it.
Gravitas Plus, co-presented by Skoda. Kushak. Choose what really matters.